Well, hello there and welcome to this presentation for stakeholders of the second generation search and rescue aviation programme that you might have heard referred to as UKSAR2G. I'm Damien Oliver. I'm the Commercial and Programmes Director in the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency, and I'm also the Senior Responsible Owner for UKSAR2G, which is the subject of this presentation. UKSAR2G has three main objectives. First, we want to build upon the successes of the current aviation arrangements in place today and operated on behalf of Her Majesty's Coast Guard by Bristow Helicopters and 2XL Aviation. We're very proud of the work our SAR crews, engineers and support staff do to help us save lives. We think that through a more tailored solution that uses data to match the types of assets we use to meet the demands we face, we can do even more to protect the safety of life. Second, through stronger collaboration with our colleagues in the other blue light services, we can better support those organisations in the work that they do, and likewise, in return, formalising our commitments to save lives anywhere in the UK. Third, we want to use technology to drive improved outcomes in the life-saving work that we do. We certainly see a role for unmanned aircraft, and we're working with the CAA to create the rules under which unmanned aircraft can effectively work for us. There's other groundbreaking technology out there that we're keen to embrace to help us ultimately take the search out of search and rescue. So before we get into the presentation, I'm going to read an important disclaimer which is relevant to what we're talking about today. So please do bear with me as I read it as it's presented to you on the screen right now. So the MCA is providing its current strategy on various aspects of the proposed procurement and current information. However, the MCA reserves the right to amend and update its strategy and all information at any time before the formal launch of a procurement process. The MCA has no liability for the accuracy, adequacy or completeness of any information, and the MCA has no liability for any costs or expenses of any party. The MCA reserves the right to keep a record of any queries and to circulate such queries to interested parties. So now on to some important housekeeping points, and I promise we'll get into the presentation. So I clearly don't need to point out where the toilets or the fire escapes are. However, there are a few features which are quite unique to this format of this presentation. We have found that there can be a short delay sometimes in transitioning the slides between presenters, so do bear with us if that happens. During the first half of this session, my team and I will talk through the UKSAR2G programme in more detail. And in the second half of the session, we'll take questions from you, and you can submit questions at any time on this call using the Q&A tab wherever it appears on your screen. You don't have to identify yourself to get your question read, but even if you do, we won't. Please do note that if you do drop off this call, it may not be possible to rejoin. So if anyone's watching Netflix at home, it might be a good idea to tell them to stop. However, don't worry, this presentation is being recorded and will be posted on our website and on our YouTube page soon after this session has finished. Next slide, please. So the presentation today, broken down into 6 parts. We'll be looking at the business case. I think it's going to be interesting to you to understand how it is the business case that supports UKSAR2G is being pulled together. It will also tell you a lot about the programme itself. Our engagement strategy, how we're going to work with you more proactively than ever before on UKSAR2G, how data is so important to how we organise ourselves in the future and how it's going to transform what we do. We'll talk about the technical requirements because that's of great interest to everybody on the call, I'm sure. And then I'll summarise where we are with the programme before going into the second half of the presentation on question and answers. So before we get into the meat of the presentation, I thought I'd just talk a bit about the history of how we've got to where we've got to, in case some on the call perhaps are a little less familiar with search and rescue aviation in the UK. So the MCA became the sole operator of search and rescue aviation, civilian search and rescue aviation in the UK in 2015, taking on the very proud legacy that was established by the military for many decades before that. The service operates from 10 coastal bases covering some 2 million square miles, and the Leonardo AW189 and the Sikorsky S-92 helicopters form the backbone of that service. Between the start of the contract and December 2019, our helicopters have flown well over 10,500 missions and rescued some nearly 5,000 people. And it's worth also mentioning a recent addition to our fleet, which is 2 King Air fixed-wing planes providing a pan-government aerial surveillance service capability that is operated by 2XL out of Doncaster. Our UKSAR2G contract with Bristow Helicopters will expire in between 2024 and 2026, depending on the base, and the aerial surveillance contract in 2024. Next slide, please. So just a really important bit of context here. This programme, UKSAR2G, will always be about serving the interests of Her Majesty's Coast Guard, but it will equally recognise the important contributions we make to blue light services across the country, and indeed other organisations that have a need to call upon our services from time to time. You know, half of search and rescue helicopter taskings are in support of the other emergency services, and this programme will formalise and recognise that for the future. The MCA's aerial surveillance planes work on behalf of the Border Force and the Marine Management Organisation and the Fisheries Protection Organisation, so there's a big role that they play in providing aviation services to UK government, as well as the important role, increasingly important role, that they have in supporting search and rescue. And it's worth also remembering that the MCA's aircraft are the only aircraft that can operate at such short notice, so naturally they will always have this very, very important role ahead of them. So I'm going to pause there. If you move on to the next slide, please, Helen. I'm going to pause there. I'm going to hand over to my team to talk about the detail of the programme itself. While they're doing that, I'm going to keep my eye on the Q&A tab so that I can see your questions coming in, and please do submit them at any time as they occur to you. And you will have time at the end of the session as well to submit questions. But right now, I'm going to hand over to Neil Grant. Neil is the Aviation Programme Director for UKSAR2G, and he's going to talk to you about the programme objectives. So Neil, over to you.
Thank you, Damien, and good morning, everyone. So if I talk about the programme objectives first, one of the key objectives of the programme is to take account of what we have found through our modelling of data from several years of operations of the current SAR2G contract. Using these insights, we want to better tailor our needs for the future service. This means enabling the market to understand our demand and requirements, and to enable the market to offer tailored solutions to meet our needs. Currently, we operate separate contracts for our search and rescue helicopter service and our aerial surveillance service. It is our expectation that our requirements for an aerial surveillance service will form part of the future contract. The MCA delivers its current services to meet its various international obligations. However, as it does today, the service responds to the need of other UK emergency service partners when requested to do so. It does this by utilising the spare capacity the service has, and the intention is that this will continue into the future service. The Aeronautical Rescue Coordination Centre, the AARCC at Fareham, will continue as the tasking authority in a future service. We also expect the service to operate under the current regulatory framework, with a potential of expansion of scope to take account to better formalise for those tasks which we currently undertake on a best endeavours basis. We also see, as Damien said, the potential for the use of unmanned aerial vehicles and other new technologies in the future service, and we are working with the CAA on a framework to achieve this. Next slide, please. How did we come to the objectives I've just discussed? Well, we've done a lot of work prior to this event today. Over the last 18 months, we've undertaken a post-implementation review of UKSAR2G, talking to stakeholders and users of the service, and modelling of data to understand how the current service operates, and if it's achieved the objectives we set out. This report highlights the need to further assess what any future service may want to achieve. We also undertook a market readiness review, talking to industry and others to gain an insight into the market's appetite and interest in a future service, and how it could be better structured to increase competition and deliver better value for money for the taxpayer. Tailored conversations with other government organisations, ensuring that we are aligned and that we understand their needs for future service. And modelling of SAR data. This has showed that we can better tailor solutions to meet our demand and offer better value for money. These reports have highlighted several key considerations for UKSAR2G, and as I discussed, that the service should be market-led, enabling tailored solutions which focus more on outcomes and effects. We should seek to procure along capability-based requirements, thus stimulating competition. We want to formally recognise that the MCA provides a high level of cross-government support on a best endeavour basis as well. And we should also seek to utilise innovation and emerging technologies such as unmanned aerial vehicles to conduct searches. Next slide, please. So how does that fit into commercial strategy? Well, we will not be mandating asset types, base locations, equipment, roles or training, and other aspects of the service, but will instead specify outcomes and capabilities to be delivered based on our modelling and experience gained from UKSAR2G. Currently, we expect to let the UKSAR2 contract as 3 lots. Lot 1, fast, urgent, short-range rescue, able to respond at short notice, and we see this as the majority of tasks. Lot 2, high endurance, long-range rescue, responding at longer notice. And Lot 3, fixed-wing and potentially unmanned aerial vehicles, undertaking rapid searches, surveillance, and pollution response. Next slide, please. So how does this fit into a programme timeline? Well, the programme is split into 4 distinct phases. Phase 1, strategy. Phase 2, procurement. Phase 3, transition. Phase 4, operational delivery. Next slide, please. So if I look at phase 1 strategy, this work is ongoing and will continue through this calendar year. This is all about preparation to go to market, including production of all the procurement documentation and gain the necessary internal and external approvals to proceed. We will continue with industry and operational stakeholder engagement events, one of which, of course, we're doing today. Phase 2 is the procurement phase, commencing in the first quarter of 2021. We expect this process to be around 18 to 24 months, taking us to contract award. Transition. This is a planned phase-in of the new contract and phase-out of existing contracts. We anticipate a mobilisation period of around 18 to 24 months, followed by a transition-in period of around 24 months process, from the first base go-live to the final base go-live, circa 2024 to 2026 in total. And then phase 4, operational delivery. This is when the service is delivered to Her Majesty's Coast Guard to commence operations. And this will form part of the transition period. And a key person who will be undertaking the engagement with operational stakeholders is Sam Williams. And I will now pass over to him to discuss this further.
Thank you, Neil, and good morning. In way of introduction, my name is Sam Williams, and as of about a month ago, I took up the position of the HM Coast Guard's operational senior user interface for the UKSAR2G project. Prior to this, I held the position of staff officer within Her Majesty's Coast Guard Specialist Operations Team. With regards to my new role, in simple terms, its primary aim is to act as that conduit between HM Coast Guard and the wider UKSAR2G project team. With the overall aim of ensuring that the project builds on the success of the current UKSAR service, takes heed of the lessons that have been learnt, and delivers a truly world-class solution for HM Coast Guard. I will also be engaging with you, our wider stakeholders, to identify where we share mutual areas of work and to ensure that you are fully appraised as to how we will be able to work with you collaboratively in the future. To ensure that our aircraft requirements represent both an effective and an efficient balance of capability, primarily to HM Coast Guard, but also to support as many of our stakeholders as is feasible, some further engagement is planned with you. This engagement will follow on from the teleconversations that occurred at the end of 2019 and early 2020 with the Category 1 responders and some of the other government departments, and will commence initially with a review of the requirements documentation, with the aim of ensuring, as far as is possible, that these requirements align with HM Coast Guard's need of that future service. Similar activity will then also take place with those Cat 1 responders who have been involved in those teleconversations and are responsible and accountable for some type of search and rescue life-saving activity. This is to ensure that you are fully aware of the type of solution that we are looking to procure and how that solution will be able to support you in those collaborative areas of work. Looking to the future, our engagement will continue through a mix of targeted engagement with individual stakeholders as and when that will be required, and also more generally in the form of attendance of the numerous UKSAR group meetings. That's it from me, relatively short and sweet, but just wanted to really introduce myself to you. I'm now going to hand over to John Foster, who's going to take you through the data modelling. Thank you.
Thanks, Sam, and good morning, everyone. So I've got a few slides to talk you through this morning, all to do with the data modelling approach that we've undertaken for the best part of this year and the last few months of 2019. Really, the purpose of data modelling was to really get some detailed analysis of historic activity for the civil UKSAR service for the last 3.5 years or so, as well as to develop a tool that would allow bidders to put their proposals together as part of the new programme measured against our sort of historical data. On the screen at the moment, you can see two visualisations. The bottom left was created in Power BI, and on the right, the map visual was created in Jupyter. And these are some of the visuals and interactive tools that we have available at the moment. Next slide, please. So as I've said, the purpose of our data modelling was very much to provide detailed insights into the range and breadth of activities that Helicopter's been up to for the last few years. We've done this through 2 4-month projects. The first one was to deliver the insights themselves, and the second one was the development of the simulation modelling tool. All aspects of the projects are being assured by external professionals to ensure the quality of the modelling work itself. Next slide, please. So on the screen here, you can see a screen grab from a Power BI report. Clearly, it's usually interactive. I obviously have a screen grab here. And we have a range of visuals and numbers that are available to ourselves. Simply clicking on the tool itself allows us to drill through the data that's provided to understand all aspects, or many aspects, should I say, individual instance, as well as ranges of instance by either date, time, location, etc. So we have about 3.5 years worth of data available to us. Primarily it's collected from the ARCC, but we've also used some of the HMCG vision reports, some of the HMCG operational management system data, as well as a few other small data sets collected by the commercial team, as well as the current helicopter provider. So next slide, please. Just to give you a flavour of some of the information that has fallen out. At the top left visual in that tree map there, we can see that just shy of 50% of all activity is for HM Coast Guard as a primary stakeholder. Nearly, well, just over 24% is for the ambulance service, 24% against for the police, or just under. And then the very small boxes in the bottom right-hand side are for the distress and diversion cell for foreign partners, foreign countries, as well as other stakeholders, which also includes a few of the erroneous errors which we are still working through. So looking at the actual range of work itself, we know that HMCG primarily works in the maritime and coastal domains. The ambulance service, we're very heavily supporting of medical transfers between hospital to hospital, but we also support incidents like road traffic incidents. And then for the police as well, we know that we have a heavy support to the lost and missing person searches, as well as to the mountain rescue teams in Wales and Scotland. So looking to the visual on the bottom left-hand side, we can really just see a quick breakdown of how we're operating. So about 21% in the maritime domain, nearly 30% in the coastal, and just shy of 50% in the land domain. At the 12 o'clock, you can probably just about make out the aeronautical domain, which is all support that the ARC puts into the distress and diversion cell. And then finally, on the bottom right, I just wanted to give you a flavour of where exactly we're operating as individual assets from their base locations. The light blue, dark blue and oranges constitute close to 96% of all activities, which is within 150 nautical miles of the base's locations. But as you can see, the 52% is within 50 nautical miles of a base location. And it's only a very small percent, a little over 4%, where we operate at ranges greater than 150 nautical miles. That's all from me for now. If you do have any questions, please put them into the Q&A box. But now I'm going to hand over to Phil Hanson, who is the programme's Technical Assurance Manager. Thank you.
Thanks, John, and morning, everyone. So just a couple of slides from me, you'll be pleased to know, just to take you through some of the technical aspects of the programme. As has already been stated, the requirements will be written in capability and output and effects terms. We're completely agnostic about the delivery method. So what that means in practice is we won't be specifying any equipment. We will just be saying, this is the effect we want. So you, industry, as the experts, please tell us how you can best deliver this using the latest technology. Clearly, they have access to the latest technology, so we would expect them to utilise it and suggest it to us. We really are encouraging innovation through this approach, and we really want to put an innovative approach and a continuously innovative approach as we go through the contract. And as it says here, evidence provided by the bidders to give the evaluators confidence that what they're actually saying that they can do is actually achievable. So it's all about evidence for us, the provision of that evidence. Next slide, please. Just wanted to give you a quick look at the requirements here as they stand at the moment. And as I stated at the beginning, this is the current layout. It may look nothing like that at all when we finally publish them in the tender. But this is just to give you an idea. I'd like to point out a couple of points here. The measure of effectiveness. Now this has two levels. There's a threshold level which represents the minimum level that we would expect. And we really do work very hard to pitch those at the right level. The objective level is more of an aspirational level, but we do believe that it's pitched at a level which is achievable. Logic suggests, however, that a tender response of some 200 odd or 180 odd requirements that we have will be a mixture. Some will claim the threshold level, i.e. the minimum, and some will claim the objective or the more aspirational level. We wouldn't expect a solution to be claimed for either all threshold or all objective. It's likely to be a mixture. Just wanted to talk a little bit about the evaluation as well. So when we come to evaluate this, we'll pull the evaluation team from various people across the MCA who are experts in their own field. So we'll use that expertise to help us evaluate. Each requirement is evaluated by more than one person, preferably 2 or 3, but certainly more than one. All of whom will attend a consensus meeting so we can have a consensus view to ensure fairness and consistency. The output from this meeting will be an agreed score for that particular requirement. So very short and sweet from me. That's just about it from me. And I'd like to hand now back to Damien, who will do the summary.
Thanks, Phil. So do get your questions in while I'm summarising what you've heard so far today. Questions can often dig into detail, which perhaps we don't cover in the presentations always. So do keep those questions coming in. But in the meantime, let me just summarise what I think you've just heard. I hope what has come across loud and clear is that UKSAR2G is an evolution and improvement upon what is already a world-class capability. It is not a means by which to reduce or dilute the capability that's in place today. So I hope that's really, really clear. We're determined to continue to invest in this capability in the future. Safety of life is absolutely critical to us, but there are also are a great many other things that we do in support of government more generally that we now are very much forward-leaning on. We certainly think that fixed-wing aircraft can better support search and rescue, certainly the search bit, and they already have a role to play in supporting the work of our law enforcement bodies in criminal detection work that goes on from time to time. We want the new UKSAR2G to be innovative. Unmanned aircraft are the things that we think about most, I think, when we think about innovation in aerospace. They certainly will have a role in the future. And we're talking about the sort of unmanned aircraft that can operate beyond visual line of sight at some range and endurance, compared with what perhaps we're more used to seeing in the emergency services by way of sort of tactical use of drones. another technology besides that can help us find people more quickly who need our help. We are determined to work collaboratively with other government departments who have an interest in the work that we do. I think it's fair to say that so much of what history has done in search and rescue has been born out of custom and practice. I'm determined to make that a much more formal commitment in the future, with a greater focus on everybody's needs, not just that of Her Majesty's Coast Guard. And ultimately, whatever we do in the future has to be robust, reliable, and continues and improves indeed on the value for money that it offers the taxpayer. And there's been a lot of discussion about how we will engage with you. Sam was talking about his role. He's new to the team. He's an investment I've made in the team to represent our interests, but also act as a conduit for you to feed back to us what it is that you would like to see in UKSAR2G. Again, I think it's probably fair to say that that conversation, for reasons of time, was pretty limited in the previous competition, but we're not going to make that same decision again. We're going to be much more transparent and much more two-way in our communication with you in the stakeholder community, and Sam is your principal point of contact for that. So I hope that's all very clear. This will be the first of several such presentations. We'd normally be doing this with you in person, but clearly that can't happen at the moment. And so we'll continue to use this format for as long as it's required. But now I think we'll move on to questions and answers, and do keep the questions coming in as we go through them. If you are having technical issues in submitting a question, go to our website. You can find a link to our page on the website, and within that there is an opportunity for you to submit questions at any time as they occur to you. And for reasons of transparency, as I've said already, we will respond to you when and wherever you wish to raise a particular question. So let's get started with the Q&A. And the first one is, will the aerial surveillance capability include evidence gathering and evidencing in court if required? I think I will preface this and then I'll pass to Sam to answer the question, because he has a background in this particular area. But my preface would be to say yes, just as we do today. The fixed-wing aircraft in particular that operate from Doncaster have a phenomenal ability to detect activity, whatever it may be. We as an organisation, we as Her Majesty's Coast Guard, are not a law enforcement body per se, so any information that comes from the aircraft that is used for criminal prosecution purposes is done so at the risk of the organisation that is taking that information. But Sam, is there anything more you'd like to say on that particular question?
Thank you, Damien. Not loads. I mean, absolutely. We do currently provide the service. So imagery that's been captured from both our fixed-wing aerial assets and our rotary wing has been used as evidence in court cases, and that's certainly something that I think we certainly don't want to lose, and will absolutely take forward into this next contract. So yeah, in answer to the question, yes, that will be something we'll certainly aim to achieve.
Thanks, Sam. Next question is, does the type of response or asset required change when looking at the distance from the base? I think inevitably it does. The more endurance we have to build into the platform, typically the larger the platform itself. As you may be aware, our Sikorsky S-92 helicopters provide the longer range capability, which is more sort of relevant to looking out to the west when it comes to longer range SAR. But I think, as Neil has said, the frequency under which we undertake rescues beyond sort of 150 miles from the coast is indeed very infrequent. And indeed, the number of times when aircraft have to move out of their areas into other areas again is not that frequent. So while we'll always need that capability of high endurance aircraft, not necessarily will they match the frequency of taskings that the sort of lower endurance aircraft that we may wish to procure in the future would also provide. But having said all of that, we are completely platform agnostic when it comes to the aircraft that operate in the future. We're interested in the effect, and so even if it was a continuation of the same fleet, that would be of no consequence to us so long as the effect and the value for money was achieved. So I hope that answers that question. Has data from the air ambulance been merged into the statistics, and how is air ambulance activity factored into the requirement? I think this is one for you, John, to answer.
Yeah, thanks, Damien. There's actually a question slightly further down about Irish Coast Guard data as well, so I'm going to answer both at the same time, if I may. As part of the preliminary activity around the data analysis, we did look at external aviation organisations, the AAA around the UK, as well as Irish Coast Guard. And due to various commercial sensitivities with data sharing and the information contained within the data, we weren't able to gain a consensus to share between any of the AAA partners or the Irish Coast Guard. So in short, the answer is no. It was a consideration, but we were unable to include it in the end. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Next question is to do with stakeholder training. It goes, to preserve what we know about SAR stakeholder training, can the MCA produce a map of SAR stakeholders and their training level needs, rather like the interactive map of SAR jobs? I think that's a really good suggestion. So good, I might even claim it as my own. I think it is something which we have learned a lot of lessons from so far as stakeholder training is concerned, particularly in that transition phase towards whatever comes next. And we're determined to make sure that stakeholder needs more generally, whether that's training or other needs besides, are taken care of under UKSAR2G. I think we need to have a conversation with everybody in the stakeholder community about what those needs actually are, rather than trying to apply a one-size-fits-all solution to that, which I think is to the point of the question about having a map which reflects the true nature of demand for stakeholder training that we can agree upon. And then there again, there's where Sam comes into the equation, because that's a body of work he'll be working on with Maddie and the team and Helen. So that is something which we are absolutely determined to improve upon under UKSAR2G. Good suggestion. Like I say, I'm going to claim it as my own. The next one is, please can you clarify how this is being funded? Neil, where are you getting the checkbook from for UKSAR2G?
Not from my pocket. Yeah, sorry, this is central government funded, so this is through HMT, Treasury, through the Department of Transport and through to the MCA. So there's a funding line within the MCA for UKSAR2G, which will get approved as part of the overall budget and business case for UKSAR2G as we go forward through this year. But as Damien said, this is not a cost saving exercise. We're not seeking to save any money here. We're just seeking to better deliver the service tailored to our needs.
Thanks, Neil. Next question is, how will we maintain engagement with the community throughout this multi-year programme and ensure user requirements are properly reflected? I think this is a really important question. One of the things I'm determined to change is this focus on getting over the line and then saying, that's done, let's just carry on turning a handle. There's, under UKSAR2G, got to be a constant evolution of capability, a reflection of how technology changes over the life of a 10-year contract like this, and making sure that we are always tapped into that innovation as we go through. So there will be a very clear line of innovation through UKSAR2G, which will continue to evolve the capability through the life of the programme to reflect what technology can bring to the equation, but also what users' needs are as we develop, so that we're not making, quite sort of short notice, sometimes quite difficult adjustments to our capabilities to reflect something which we didn't anticipate at the very start. It's very hard to find a crystal ball that will take you through 10 years forward, but we will make sure that therefore we're constantly reflecting users' evolving needs as we go through the life of the UKSAR2G programme. It's a great question. Activities based on historical data, is there any scope to explore including other activity not yet acted upon, such as air mobility of small 7-passenger NHS specialist teams for national deployment in the event of a major incident, or deployment to offshore vessels? Absolutely, let's have the conversation. let's see what we can achieve together. Again, I will say this now: nothing is off the table. Clearly, there will come a point where we can't boil the ocean, and we mustn't try and try and make this thing be all things to everybody. But that is a really reasonable suggestion and something we should be actively thinking about. And again, it's the value of this conversation that we're going to have over the next several weeks and couple of months as we develop our requirement. Having that insight will help us shape our requirement to suit those needs that we may not necessarily be thinking about just right now. Will the rescue dog requirement be explicitly stated this time? Phil, do you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Damien. So as has been pointed out, the requirement will be expressed in capability and output terms. So it will mention the fact that we need to move teams around, like mountain rescue, lone and rescue, and with the associated equipment. So it will be as an example, but it won't be stated explicitly, no, because all we're looking for is capability, output, and effect.
Thanks, Phil. Please can you give more details about the planned timelines for further engagement? Keep an eye on the website for details of further engagement events like this. We haven't settled on an exact format yet, but I can envisage smaller sessions of much more interactive back and forth with stakeholders that Sam and the team will be running over the coming weeks and months. Do keep an eye out for those. We've got your details. Everyone who's on the call, we've got your details. I think one of the great things actually about search and rescue more generally is that we're quite a small community of people for whom we by and large know quite a lot of them, and so it's often quite straightforward to connect people to the right discussions when they happen. But if indeed you worry that you might not be part of that future discussion or detailed discussion about the user requirement and how it develops and your input into that, do keep an eye out on the website. The opportunities will be presented there over the coming days, weeks and months. What kind of notice to move are the aerial surveillance assets at? If you're talking about now, Phil, do you want to just explain what that is?
Sure. So if we're talking about current capability, it's 45 during the day and 60 at night, although they do generally get off in 30 minutes during the day without any problem at all, or below 30 minutes. But in the future, we won't be stating a response time. We'll be asking the bidders to state that response time, which drives them towards giving us the best solution that they can. So we'd be looking to drive those. So I've kind of answered your question in two halves. I hope that does answer it.
Thanks, Phil. Can you reassure that the mountain rescue teams will see an improved service, quicker, safer, more supportive? I mean, I hope that for mountain rescue teams now, there is a noticeable improvement, particularly in our engagement, but also in the support that we provide, recognising that there have been points of discussion along the way. Again, I think, not wishing to sound like a broken record, let's make sure that UKSAR2G starts from a good place so far as mountain rescue's requirements are concerned. The opportunity is there for it to do so, and that will come back through discussion we have between the volunteer bodies, the police that ultimately represents them, and through back to us here into the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency. So I hope that things are already improving so far as how we work with mountain rescue teams. I recognise there are some fixed constraints around some things that you'd like us to do, but we sadly can't. But we're cognizant of that, and we're aware of the need to try and address and fix that for the future. So I hope that helps answer the question. Will the concept of the standard MRT load and delivery at 4,000 feet remain in the tech spec? Phil?
Yeah, thanks, Damien. So as stated, we are not stating specific requirements. So we are stating based upon moving teams around. So the standard MRT load is known by the bidders. It's also then reflected how they do that in the modelling that John talked about. So a mixture between those two should give you that answer. But again, we're not being prescriptive. We're saying this is what you need to deliver in terms of effect and capability.
Thanks, Phil. Will there be any development in the provision of medical support as part of the service, either enhancement of the present paramedic skills or collaboration with the NHS? I think there's always an opportunity to develop the service that we provide the public in every respect, including the level of medical care that we offer. I think equally though, there's a real importance to create clear blue water between what search and rescue aviation does and what HEMS is. They are quite different, and the focus is also quite different, and I wouldn't want to blur those lines because we have a very, very reliable, highly capable, charity funded for the most part air ambulance system in the UK, and that should continue without blurring the lines between what we might do in the future as well. So I think I'm quite clear that we always seek to improve the whole end offer to the public that we make, but trying to avoid blurring any particular lines. Evaluation. You mentioned that you will take evaluators from all relevant areas from MCA. Will you be extending that to cover key stakeholders, given their significant tasking probably lies outside of the MCA scope of expertise? So the evaluation team will be an MCA one, but the nature of the evaluation strategy will have been influenced by you all. When we come to actually evaluate the bids, we will be taking a completely holistic approach to what's submitted. I'm absolutely clear, and I hope you've got that sense from everybody else, that while our aircraft say HM Coast Guard on the side, they serve a greater purpose than just working on the coast and out to sea, which is important. But as you saw from John's statistics, is about 50% of the overall demand profile. So none of us are going to be turning a blind eye or diluting the attention we give to the other 50% of demand, which must be properly taken account for. And I've said a couple of times already how determined I am to formalise the support that we offer to the other Blue Light services, and by virtue of that, to many of you on this call right now. Is it anticipated that drone beyond visual line of sight will be fully approved by the CAA? Phil, do you want to pick that one up?
Sure. Yeah. Yes. The answer is yes. We need to be able to. Those of a certain age will get this. We need to be able to give the Martini solution anytime, any place, anywhere. We can't afford to wait around for special permissions and carving up airspace. So yes, it will have to be fully approved and underwritten by the CAA. We know it's a really big ask in the time frame, but that's where we're trying to get to. There's one you missed there, Damien, as well. So there was a first bit on that one, as I see. So it says lot 2 has a range been specified yet. So I'm guessing John could answer that.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. We haven't specified from the modelling, but as alluded to on my 4th slide, it's about 87% of activity occurs within 100 nautical miles of the base, and then it's an additional 9% that takes it out to 150. So for your sort of standard 1-2 casualty search or rescue mission within 150 nautical miles, we believe that will be for lot 1 as standard or as general. And then beyond 150 nautical miles out to the full range and capability of that particular asset type is what we would expect. Although, of course, we do expect lot 2 to operate within the 150 nautical mile boundary, depending on the type of incident, number of casualties, etc. So at the moment we're looking at around 150, but that is not specified within the requirement, as Phil has alluded to at the moment. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Next question is, do you foresee a transition from the HM Coast Guard contract shaped through collaboration to assist other agencies to an innovative means to contract for marine, maritime, aerial services where there is a cross-government contract from which any agency can source aviation support over the sea from the right asset with the right suite of capabilities? Yeah, great question. One of the things we've wrestled with is do we go down the route of securing absolute collaboration in a contractual sense with other parts of government? I think the complication that presents is when you start to talk about joint contracting with other government departments, you hit barriers when it comes to the governance of all of that. I think what has worked very well is how we've taken that forward under the aerial surveillance banner, and how that particular contract, while it's an MCA contract, has been built to serve a range of needs, and indeed does so quite routinely now. And I think that's where we're going to be going on this route through the current procurement on UKSAR2G. Next question is Hemsby Lifeboat. With regard to independent lifeboats, is there any provision for training documentation for independents similar to that provided to the RNLI? I mean, yes is the answer to that. We view the contribution of the independent lifeboats alongside the RNLI as important and valuable, and you'll have our commitment that we will make sure that you have the same access to the same materials as the RNLI does. What technical requirements are you considering setting for the sustainability resilience of the proposed solutions, especially as you seek to utilise new and innovative ideas? Phil, do you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, sure. Obviously, if there are innovative solutions being proposed, there would have to be they would have to convince us through the evidence that they are sustainable and resilient over the course of the contract. The issue that we will have, of course, or the thing that it will come back to is, regardless of what innovative solution they're provided, they are still having to provide the availability of our service. So that's what it will come back to, and that's what we'll judge them against, both in the evaluation and in the delivery.
Thanks, Phil. Will non-HM Coast Guard users of the service be charged back for the occasions when they call on UKSAR2G assets? There are no plans at the moment to change the charging regime that's in place right now. Clearly, for that which doesn't form part of our formalised requirement for the future, which we're being asked to do, which hasn't equally therefore formed part of our predicted demand, we'd have to look at how that would be funded. But the funding discussion is ongoing at the moment, so I can't really speak to that in any great detail at the moment. Stakeholder training, simulation training is recognised as cost-effective with aviation. What consideration is being what consideration is being provided this type of training provision to engage with stakeholder needs? I think that's saying the simulation training, the package that we rolled out in place of hands-on familiarisation with the aircraft. Yes, it is, of course, naturally not just a more cost-effective way of delivering training, but actually more effective, more generally, we found, because you have more time to take in what's being presented in front of you when it comes to the simulated training or simulated familiarisation that we've offered. Whereas sometimes things can get missed when you're walked around the aircraft itself, and certainly if you're trying to pick things up in flight. So again, that was probably one of those things. The training package was one of those things that was delivered and designed and delivered at pace, and probably consequently we tried to create a sort of one-size-fits-all solution, one-size-fits-all package, and inevitably it didn't cater for everybody's needs. So we now have the opportunity to change that, and indeed we will. What account is being taken of mass casualty risk around the coast of the UK? And forgive me, this is in relation to lot 2. Phil, do you want to pick this one up?
Sure. Yeah, again, we're not specifying a particular range, but we do expect that both the lot 1, lot 2 and the lot 3, or I expect, we do implore them to work together. So there will be a mass casualty sustainable event, we're calling it, requirement in there as well, which basically says you have to support an event which is happening with a number of assets to help push that through. But again, this will be based on the modelling and what we've seen in the past.
Thanks, Phil. Is there an option to add a link capability to fixed wing and rotary wing into a recognised maritime picture through the NIMIC? Absolutely, there is. And one of the things, again, it's going to be a very busy program, this one, but there's a whole suite of data and information that flows from our aircraft, but at the moment it's simply not being used in any particular way. So we have to make sure that not only are we thinking about the capabilities of the aircraft themselves, but also what happens to the outputs from the aircraft in terms of data. And that's again a conversation Sam will be having to make sure that we shape the requirement to take advantage of all the data and, that comes from the aircraft, so that it can, in this particular example, inform that recognised maritime picture. Will aircraft be specified to carry infectious disease patients in light of COVID-19 from the transfer of patients from the island communities? We've learned a heck of a lot about the transport of infectious patients. It's always part of our requirement, so there's nothing new there. We have always stipulated that our aircraft must be capable of moving infectious patients. There was so much that was unknown about COVID-19 in the early days. Our approach to how we responded to that was more cautious than it would be if it were something we recognised more. And consequently, we did, I say we, Bristow did build in quite a lot of capability to respond to the COVID crisis in terms of protecting aircrew, while at the same time continuing the really important job of moving very ill people from the island communities to mainland hospital facilities, and that you can anticipate will form part of our next requirements, something that will reflect what we've learned from that experience. But it's fair to say, throughout this whole crisis, we continue to respond with what we knew. And what we continue to evolve by way of protecting aircrew from any infectious disease, including COVID-19. Dogs. Live animal in an aircraft in flight is an important issue for regulators. Dog needs to be in the requirements so that it filters through to the Ops Manual and AOC. Noted. We will make sure that we take proper account of that. Contract growth. The current contracts have seen demands on assets increase and the intent to grow stakeholders is apparent for the future. Is there provision to allow for growth without adversely impacting users? Well, it's really interesting because it can seem like what we're doing is expanding ever more. I think certainly on the fixed wing side, that's probably true, which is why we're continuing to have to build capacity into those arrangements to account for a growing level of demand for fixed wing aviation support. But I think when it comes to rotary, the mission statistics have remained more or less static over the past several years. That's not to say they won't in the future. We need to always have an eye on building resilience in the form of capacity, particularly if we grow the stakeholder base and therefore grow the demand for the use of aircraft in the future. So it's a very good point, but I think rotary flight hours and taskings have been pretty static for the past several years, and we'll certainly be looking at seeing how that might change under John's work on the data modelling side for the future. Will there be an option to regularly share data in the future from the ARCC and the RNLI on specific incidents that include the RNLI assets so that both can improve how we work together? John, you've been doing some great work with the RNLI. Do you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, thanks, Damien. Yeah, so over the last couple of weeks, I've been working closely with a couple of the RNLI data scientist team to better understand through both the ARCC and the RNLI data exactly how we are working together. We have generated some very interesting insights that I think it's fair to say were not understood or appreciated beforehand. It's given us a very good understanding of how we should be sharing data in the future. So I have a few meetings in place in the coming weeks, and this question and the ability to share data between the RNLI and the MCA with greater ease will certainly be at the top of the list. So stand by, and we'll see what we can achieve. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Will a new concept of operations be published in connection with SAR2G, and will this be in conjunction with the RNLI for maritime? Phil, do you want to pick that one up?
Yeah, sure, Damien. So yes, the simple answer is yes. Concept of operations will certainly be written. Whether it be published or not is yet to be decided, but it will be in connection with SAR2G, and we need to make sure it's all joined up. As John has just stated, we do need to make sure that we are very joined up with the RNI and our other delivery partners as well. So we need to make sure that we're really joined up.
Thanks, Phil. Will there be an offshore, you might as well stay with Phil. Will there be an offshore firefighting team capability to cover the associated maritime risk?
So as stated earlier, we're not specifying any particular teams. We're just saying you will need to deploy teams of various sizes, etc. So we are being very, very agnostic about this. We are being very, we're not specifying mounted rescue or any other teams. We're just saying you need to be able to move sizable teams around. So again, it's output and effects based.
Okay, thanks, Phil. I can see more questions coming in. We may run out of time to get to them all, but don't worry, we will answer them all in text and publish on our website. So if we don't get to you, apologies. But as we expected, there's been quite a few questions. Are there any thoughts or direction in the technical requirements to work with partners to explore and understand what innovative developments other organisations are considering to provide a joined-up approach? Absolutely, there is. Again, it goes back to that discussion around collaboration and working together with other government departments. We're determined to make that happen and make it work. And so, yeah, absolutely, that is going to be a very key consideration for the future. Are the MCA aware of the potential of hyperspectral sensors for finding people in distress in the wilderness or at sea, and watching for that capability from the bidders? Phil?
Simple answer is yes, we are aware of it. We have stated the requirement in a way which would lead you to using something which is automated and something which will find people in distress. And yes, we will be looking for it from the bidders, but not any specific delivery method. It's just the overarching capability we'd be looking for.
Thanks, Phil. And there have just been a couple more questions, and I'm just going to quickly rattle through them, then I can honestly say that I've answered all the questions. Are there any plans for an image downlink and sharing capability? Yes, there is. That's something that's being rolled out across our aircraft at the moment, and that will certainly feature into the future. On technology, could new airframes be fitted with up-to-date technology? And the example given is mobile phone locating devices. Again, that is something we're already working on today and will undoubtedly feature in the future. Anything that can take the search out of search and rescue is something that we are determined to include for the future, and certainly positively evaluate for the future. And that is all of the questions, bang on 10:30. So I'm going to wrap things up there and say thank you very much indeed for a really valuable question and answer session. And I hope the first part of the presentation was equally of value. As we say, this is the first of many such sessions. There'll be more detailed breakout sessions in the future that Sam will lead, and I hope you'll be able to participate in all of that. And I know that lots of people are interested in doing that as well, so we will make sure that you're included with any future stakeholder engagement sessions that we have planned. But for now, I just want to say thank you to my team for walking you through this programme today. It's really exciting. I think you can tell that we're all enthused by it and are sure that we can make what is already a fantastic service even better for the future, and we're going to do that with your help. So thank you everyone for your time, and hope to see you all very soon, and in the meantime, stay safe. Thank you.